Rinpoche, venerable monks, and everybody else, a very warm welcome to this talk organised by the Cambridge University Buddhist Society. It is a true privilege to be able to listen to Khenpo Sudaje Rinpoche speaking this evening. He is one of the most eminent teachers of the Buddha Dharma in China and becoming increasingly known in the West as well. He had a thorough and deep training in Tibetan Buddhist theory and practices, so he had the traditional Tibetan Buddhist training for a monk. And since then, he's devoted himself for the last 30 years to making the Buddha Dharma accessible to as many people as possible in a form that enabled lay people as well as monks to have a really thorough Buddhist education. If you were watching the video earlier, Khenpo Rinpoche is the senior teacher at Larongga Five Sciences Buddhist Institute, Buddhist Academy, and he's using the internet and increasingly making contact in the West. He's visited many universities in the West in order to, I think, get us to engage with this extraordinary set of teachings. So he comes from a deeply traditional Tibetan Buddhist background, but he's very involved in integrating traditional Buddhist practices with the problems of the modern world. And he's also very interested and engaged in integrating what could be taken as a contemplative tradition with action out there in the world. He's founded a charity to support education, to support nursing care. He stresses the importance of compassion and looking after the poor, not just sitting on the cushion and practicing for ourselves. And in the case of Cambridge, yes, this is a place of great privilege, but it is also, as many of you here will know, a place where there is also a lot of suffering. Suffering that comes from modern lifestyle, suffering that just comes from being human beings. And what the Buddha Dharma has to offer all of us is some sort of way of finding healing for that suffering. So very much in the spirit of Khenpo Rinpoche's wish to help all of us find our own way, that he's going to give a talk tonight on the Buddha's path in practice, an end in itself or a means to a better world.
네 나왔던거 추초거 드니 족조 드니 레나 마르나 용다 데 마임바건드니 길근 드니 롭조 참아담 냠더 더스타비 드니 스카챵샤지다 로종시지 고르코숑알라 ngaranoni nya thapa
Tonight, to have this opportunity to come here, to give a teaching, also have this opportunity to learn from you, from the members of the Cambridge Students Buddhist Society and teachers, everybody who has come here tonight. Khenpo wants to extend a very heartfelt thanks.
로깃니 요니 길근 데 랍트 총아 콩남바 몽보 쳐요레 달로 응츠온데 탈란 쇼네요 로깃 그 데니 랍트 총아 몽보당 냠더 로종시기다 데니 롤란시기 고르고 여보쇼요 시집 다 춘데 있나 데니 로깃 그 추즈다 샹깃 그 추, 데니 오깃 그 추, 다 남박 섬거나가 산집 존던데 그 출력 참만디 오늘에 데나 다 때랑 데니 닝운이 있나 저 오깃 그 나왔던 출력 바래 데니 때랑 로깃 그다 때랑 추적 그 속조야 몸보즈도 데니 로깃 그 나왔던 출력 바인 사래 데니나 ngetsonyo nyamdam thandrur gurguni tani chama rolan shikyo ndoyang chi kyatam phobajire.
And looking around the audience, I'm particularly glad to see so many ordained members of the Theravada tradition in the audience. This year in Thailand, we had a conference and I had an excellent opportunity to engage in discussion and exchange with members of the Theravada, the southern tradition. In general, we speak of the southern tradition, the northern tradition, the Tibetan tradition. In any case, they're all part of the Buddha Dharma. And I'm really grateful to have this opportunity, and I hope that we can engage with each other in a very united way.
Tani ngala samsir kare yore jena ta tirip nyeshiba nzina tani jarkab ko parna yang chi tan chuglong mongo menchuk mongo yotsi tirip zire tani ta ji chulug parn sam yinna ra man nangkhar ge yang tatsu tajang mombo yosaga tirip zire ta tani tirip nyeshik bane zong tani te zamzu mayo paga tani jarkab par yinna ra ga chulug par yinna ra ga kharshuk da nashuk mug warna ya tani ta damchang ge tirip zeida chama pansan nyamda rera chi tamzu yo chi tirip muksir janz ge sonyo re.
So I guess to sort of start off with my thoughts about the 20th century, which is one that was characterized by a great deal of conflict, a great deal of struggles between different peoples, between different religious sects or religious traditions. It was in general a century of great violence. We've now arrived in the 21st century, and in some sense we can see that it has been a time where there has been an opportunity for greater communication and collaboration and cooperation in many fronts.
Ndi kapsina tani perna sharshuk ngatsu mambo jiga tani nabshuk ta ngubo yarge ya chimbu songyoni tani chanrig lakhsar chanrig shisha ndzo tamchat flojong shi dana tani rangrang sosun choi nangda pechchu sheyang shegonre karsan derang sharshuk eshiya ga yakab mambo jiga nabshuk chanrig dela tani yarge phasum soba rodang rojin bare 대당 라와고 ngatu nopshugna yuni tani jik shion ba nan raga loma nan raga sin na yang ngatu sharshug bana tani sharshug ta sanglu parmjur sanglu tani shion yang samgi meche baza nani tawar de hagonre ndotso yang chet de la songeda flojong shi jizgina chigde sharnam nyamjer yong jizda nis annadang tangrap 안나당 니가 냠냠저 용지 단 데라 녜테나 구바 첨부 득삼
어디 탐보지를
харшук 엄마 제가 납쇼고 찬릭 시릭 로종로 되는 납쇼고 엄마 탐짓 샤르크 다리 출리다 르니 안나다 땅거 되는 카르납다 안나당니가 탄선 로종단 레라시니나 구반도
So we can see that over the past century and in recent times, using scientific methods that were first developed in the West, people in Eastern countries have been able to improve their material standard of living in certainly in very discernible ways. At the same time, however, the West is also learning from the knowledge traditions, the very amazing knowledge traditions of the East. And so it's my sincere hope, in fact, that people from both parts of the world and can learn from the benefit of each other's traditions.
나와 상기비 출루 접처라 때네 더가 마오와 다 라닉 그 저데 라나메 파르테르나레다 때네 지 신속 초트 때는 지득담비 마오 달람 양탁바즈 트르네레지기 단 디르던거 때네 참말라 냐지 도르 디바찬즈 지르기인.
So, in terms of the topic for tonight's teaching, I'm going to be addressing the practice of the Buddha's teachings and whether, in fact, they are a means to gain advancements in a personal practice, or whether they are a means for achieving benefit in the wider world.
Sure, 상기가 출력제란데요. 땅 인군이나 루무즈가 tene jimjig ta lojong kala kansam she yongre te indi ngi tatsar zgla kare jena tatna sanji ge chulig zgin de pe ya chewa da tang zapa tenjawa zre te indi khu jimje de ji ta tsig jig da ni ge jirta jindam chun gona te hajang kawe ne sikerwa zre
chizre
다 측용용 그거 산지가 잡지가 죽음 제ben데 잠판 주치제단 랑거 내가 냠섬 용치제르고나 더 측용시즈 그거 배 갈레 카본두
So I've been engaged in the investigation and the study of Buddhism for a very long time, and in my opinion, when we look at the question of what the Buddha Dharma is and what the Buddhist tradition is, that it is in fact extremely vast, and it's quite difficult to put into a few words what its essence is.
옛날에 tene 추가 따돈도 냠슬랑디 tene 충가리가 나나 남지가 내금나 라니가 타라 양탁바 톱니 타라 양탁바 톱니 tene 고비야 양서 뇽버 지네 다 뇽모와다 등을 짱메피 tene tam 냥을렌데 바제르고 난자가 데스타비 제베 톱기오도요 답가로 뭉우즈 그랑아 데스타고 니르고네레지 텐자양 손사요레.
Of course, it is said that the purpose of practice in the Buddhist tradition is to obtain liberation, is to eradicate one's afflictions, and to pass beyond this existence and abide in the state of nirvana.
양 충가래 그렇감나 제부터 톱 송디 제부터 톱냈더니 따페르나 다리가 샘친 그돈 접기워 산지 그 꼬마토 쏘나야 다른 몸터네 되니 샘친 그돈 접기워 운동做 옛날에 때려 송요래.
According to other ways of saying it, or to other voices of the tradition, after one has obtained Buddhahood, one should exert oneself to the benefit of other beings and dedicate oneself primarily to these tasks.
Pena de zapapchu rinpoche zegeda bok takye na pe nyangba kheba chembozre da khong na kilo chigget ne dari gyatana chigget gyach charglo warta dari ga jigni timogo lama chakchenjre khong soni da shershung gonrum gurkabna chasong rjena sanji thopkyonda ya te muyen tartba mareze 산지 톱네 지실 건전 후 잔돈 잔로아 샘전 담적 돈 줍교 단 득조를 제야 베사로 군에 송래.
In the words of Palchu Rinpoche, who was an extremely renowned master from the Tibetan tradition who lived in the 19th century, he said in reference to the objectives of Buddhahood that obtaining Buddhahood is not, he said very clearly, it's not to obtain Buddhahood as an objective or a means in itself, but rather to use one's Buddhahood for the benefit of other sentient beings.
대런단에 girgangare yang songondo huerna ta chu zigido ngoma kasang derang ge roa ge matamche ge nat serer shijit nat serze ge tene pena man tabare zendo tang uni je ngasu chu nangdon mashi badana chula chargi mebaina kayo mare tenda kemalin na ya ta na uni ge je chundela jimjig shena da chunde 냠슬레는 젠디 맞추 머라나 소수 샘컴나 판톡 야침보 요기요래.
Tonight when I met earlier with Dr. Rachel, she likened the Buddha Dharma to an extremely healing medicine for many people in today's age. This is very, very much the case. Of course, to people who don't have an understanding of the contents of the teachings or don't have a great familiarity, then, well, it's difficult to say. But to people who commit themselves to understanding the teachings and to practicing the teachings, the benefit can be very, very great indeed.
다 랑아 지금 냠레 시사가 추 샘는 거 낫다 등을 세시 그 때다 추직면나 가성되는 거 신속도 촉직네 되나 배 공부 빠르용 열기 되니 추르근 직전이나 앉아 코리기나 앉아 건거 타는 뒤로 가마다 잠들시니나 로미 로지타나 되니 배 만자와 그 열기 퍼섬 소바 쇼요기 뒤수 된자가 되요래 야 촉직네 되네나 ngasu ruwa maga tene nang semgi dungmar nang semgi nazik dele jang chabram phaba dik hajan cheba dungmar chi ragba tendabe ne sikero.
On the one hand, we can say that the current age that we live in is certainly unprecedented in terms of the degree of development of external material conditions. At the same time, it is also one where probably we are at a point of unprecedented suffering as well.
가리제나 가선대랑 다 당선거 뒤촌데라 되니 코리거 되니 코리 먹족스 기르네 다 가국이 양다바 메바다나 대비전도는 지금 코리 그 야금도 추나나야 다 멘추 망보 용에다 되네 뭐 탐칠라 된적 메바다 되니 나추 에시아라 소바가 양 야금 망보 제릭 자마다는 디초양 다지 초르된 여보 메니 제릭양 라모라나 베 만자 망보 따르기 요지 니츠
And all kinds of incidents transpire around us, every day, all the time, whether it be stories of environmental destruction, of pollution, of wars between countries, or as in Asia, particularly in China these days, there's a great deal of worry and concern about food safety, for instance.
Perimsona de Shinia Jarkurtavina ta Lord Ngani Tagavar the Janchiki Yongre. Tandi Janchik Jurum Trot ta Parcher Mu Bum Sumda Churchi Yarmer Tene Dari Tsekcho Samet Songeda Shatsariore.
If we take a look at the Syria conflict, for example, over the past 5 years, approximately 300 people have lost their lives. 300,000 people have lost their lives.
다들이 회남물동 시친 시와 직zam즈 데네 다른 잔치그 코리그 쳤더나 등을 쌈기면 개밤 용신 요바다 양다 시와 다 시친 직zam즈그 데네 쳤소 지게 yarmarda 다 yarkim 메데너 사쇼 소소 캡처란 로요래 양 쳤소 지게 쳤소 지게 yarmar즈 데네 그런 거 사차나 데네 교사 르나면 득사 이나메디 다 랑거 yarkib나 타나 kim상내사야 메디 덴지 베 만제다리 교육내스 게려요.
And upwards of 1 million people who have been rendered displaced through this conflict too. So there are approximately 600,000 people within the country's borders who now don't have homes, and another 400,000 people who are refugees in bordering countries.
다 당래 상로 당딩군이 나총 주암 참마더 길득 찍바 상로 찍바 연거요래 예요래다 이나야 다 자급 라라 나한테 때다가 멘측 잡침보 쇼용디 되네 베나 유럽 그 자급 안선네나 되네 자급 모즈그 다 잡주란도 또 땅린 책이요래 엔진이나 간제엔 초랑수 시기래.
So even though, we are all human beings, we are the same in this respect, we're the same in our thoughts, etc. Certainly our circumstances are different depending on where we come from. In some countries there are wars, and then there are countries in Europe, for example, that are on the receiving end of the refugee situation. And as for the response in England to that, I'm sure you're all sure.
가스다리 nga 데 잡주로 안 가래 건 소화가 초다 냠지 렌용아 당 오늘 전에 그런 하장 조보래 드네 다나 런거 도사가 니양메데 참상이야메니 마색지가 된다 조르고나 나수 추고나 런걸이라 빼롱네 잔랑 노파 마시 찍제 베나 랑아 빼롱에 잔거 초라데 간레레 저런 거 또송래 드네 다 닝운이 나 체남발라 지 잡주로가 타가 레와지 왕차요 말이다 이나야 나수 다 로미 링가레라 테스타비 등은 정디 상록동 고사스 랩상고요.
And I would urge everybody to really think about what it's like, what the plight of people in a situation as in the situation of being a refugee is like, having no safety, no home, having one's immediate existence at threat. Of course, I'm not in a position to make any requests of anybody, but I think this is something that we should definitely cast our minds to and try to empathize with.
디 샤완도 수타네 나 가수 랍도 총아이나 드네 스크 타네 장 왕차다 된다 요 말이다. 옛나양 샘 그다네 자모는 거는 설간당 강이나 가수 상록던 거요.
So even though we might not have any particular power or capacity to do much, nevertheless, we certainly need to really think about this.
가레가 손로도나 다 자와 랍도 총아 짜메차 너수 드네 곰바 트럭프 드네 다 르서 띠남스 드네 다 코는 저 주반양르시 유직능 막도 되면 신속고 초다 드네 다 말의 용의 시한도 저 줍교원도 추양다 말의 썸다 된자 공권이야 요나타.
And in terms of being a monk, being an ordained person, whether or not these outside things are things that we should think about, maybe some people are of the view that the role or the proper role of an ordained person is to reside in their monastic institution, practicing the Dharma according to tradition, and in fact involving oneself or concerning oneself too much with things taking place on the outside world is not appropriate.
다티 다리 공도 집았다래 랍도 총아이 난자가 드니 추박 잠바가 첨바초이 난자가 나추 랭긴 요바치레제나 라니 긍요거 드니 조아 무츠 시사가 드니 코리거 드니 뭐 탐치게 난자가 드니 리거 등월 샘거 등월 너수 세리 다다 좀바 쉬지도 네 되나 나추 뭐 참아가 드니 저드 메피 랭겐 But
in my opinion, actually, as an ordained person, and in fact, regardless of whether one is ordained or whether one is a lay person, as a Buddhist, it is really a fundamental responsibility for us to be very concerned about the situation of sentient beings in the environment around us.
신속원에 처리했나 갈성대랑 드니 지금 네서 삽친 배 뭔가 요거 잔측 마임바 배나가서 샘는 거 단 나즈 르둥을 너초인나 잠몰은 거다나 네 총사즈 그잖아 다 동체르그나 다 동체르그나 있나 드니 냠저 야속 초르텐 레칸 다 냠저 야속나 다른 초르텐 거 초바요라 다 코층 거제니나 드니 단 잠몰은 거뭐 탐치 소브르 쉐티거 드니 락차 위와 너 동체르그나 인세레 다티 루르가 감나 드니 단 잠몰은 거뭐 탐치 소시거 드니 락차 안 땅오도 녀가 나트레 아니바도 동체르그나 인세세요레
So the various challenges that we face in the world obviously are not restricted simply to conflicts. In terms of physical suffering and mental suffering, you know, one thing or maybe one small area or not so small would be that of depression. The WHO has claimed that over the last 5 years, that they have predicted that within the next 20 years, the second major cause of illness in the world will be depression, the first being a heart disease.
다 때랑 네 담보 동체르가 나때 디즈죠. 되니 콤바요나 양이 같이 잠바지요.
So tonight I'd like to say a few things about depression, and then if there's time permitting at the end, then maybe I'll talk about a few other things too.
가르제난데 인지롱바가 왕도 시나야 답 파르칠 뉴 야차니 시사직 데라 다리 동체르가 나요너를 젠도.
And the reason that I'd like to talk about depression is that I have heard that in England 26% of the population suffer from depression.
당이 가선데라데 인기력이 약금나 녀다 시친 다 찍다 하고서 여러와 단그 야채니 시자지가 수익처럼데 파르칠 시친 찍다 더 시총 찍이야만 대인디 파르칠 다 뉴지가 나나 다리 동서 그나드 찍이요차 양초그 송도다 대인디 대랑 아춘디 나나야 당상 그사르지 너소 된니나 오늘 동서 그난 몸몸 버처도 요사 몸보 요시지.
So England, a country with a population of more than 60 million people, if 26% of this population suffers from depression, then that means that approximately 16 million people are suffering from depression. So 1 in every 4 people.
회나 다니르통 주질로그 야나까 데 오종쇼 오종구쇼가 마마 차버 띠르갑나 다니 카선데라 야나나양 다뭐 시친 그 대연초다 다 동식 또 니동 주저글로래 파르치다 니동 정하글로 달로네 동식식 연초 뭐요시체 네가마르디 니동 주저래 다된디 회나 야는 그 동철 근무 동철 요차 근무 대소 수익이로나 단다나 이탈리에 때니 흔한데 때니 다리 응소 인지를 ярко хсым гмэлэян угарвазыда карзадэр янагнаё ёцэйда жоншук икчачакырка нахсару шеука.
And in terms of these statistics in China, it's also extremely serious. According to an official count from 2014, it was claimed that 90 million people in China suffer from depression. So, you know, that's the equivalent of a combination of Holland, maybe France and Australia combined together. That many people in China are suffering from depression. Holland, Austria, and England. Yes, all of these countries, their population combined, that many people.
체르드나 땅에 셔동거 내 동서지도 나가만이 요바지래 그러나 로지 땅선로 떠나 더니 다 차릭바 첨부 뉴든 더니 에이스탄 다 콩라소바 베나 아메리게 전전 로스포즈기는다 더니 지지르즈기는다 때나바 양따른도 요즈이다는 익참몽부는 셰요레.
So depression is an illness that has existed in the past. It's said that many famous people, including Einstein, Newton, Roosevelt in the States, Churchill in England, all suffered from depression.
Tele mambo jigda yang tongtsir gna ka shiwa yang shewa re khurna tsomba bo chakchen tene gyamso tang gambo gur tsomba bo tene hawi mendana devjin dana ngotsu yalisto da khonso innina ta hawi min ranga ranga tare bugu gyaw sanare tene yalisto indrina koram chonang am chonare tatte mayembaga 그러나 시틀 인더즈나 양 그런 거 공화 뜨글려 되다가 더 하늘에 반고 인더즈나 양 동서가 나거는 랑가랑 보고게 다 시와 데라 속바가 그 동서가 나다 때네다는 랑수 저도 양 치망보요래.
It's also said that a great number of literary and artistic figures have suffered from depression, and many have even committed suicide as a result of their depression. These people including authors such as Hemingway, philosophers such as Aristotle, and even political figures such as Hitler.
실나 네 동서가 난그 파르체르다리 섬착 직장즈 랑랑 소소 다 랑소시죠 대시게요래 다 당상 잠불는 거 완도시나 로레진도 머철 야탄바 되네 동서가 날라테네 랑거랑 다리 랑소시게요래.
It's said that a third of people who suffer from depression will take their lives, and indeed every year in the world today there are 10 million people who do commit suicide.
동설근 나트 치모즈긴레즈나 항아마 네 폴로이다 좀바 보적천 다 콩거 드니 냥한다 동설지비 때비지 그럽나 동설제제도 쉬 바로 그 직된 때라 모바짱 메바당 랑거 초아때라 이챈네 등거지 용서 저와 드니 띠떡버진다 랑거랑 소브르시르톤삼 다랑든 직된 감나다나 돈덕 지양 마카 삼기 뜻다비가 묵슬 그 셈기 나타버jan지 연저요래.
Freud, in his work Mourning and Melancholy, described depression as an illness where one loses one's desire for the outside world. One loses all interest, in fact, in the outside world. One loses one's hope in oneself. And in general becomes extremely despondent and afflicted by ennui.
야 뭔가를 그 회나 때랑 니마 마시려가 남시 마요디 셈직 마르치노 nga tongtsir gna ya kusam ko na yang gare ga zam warda to da ji zagmi byawe to sem marti de cheronde yang rang nga ji tongtsir gna ka ya kusam na yang gare ga ji 총 byawe 총 lamro yak bo me di tene yang ji sem marti di de so tongtsir samindana samtsir yosare ta de mare ta ti tongtsir gna ko ngo de gare jena ti tagbar jinda 다 그런 직된디다 어떤 거 단나 드니 돈덕 마크스에 랑거랑아 예차바다 랑거랑아 뽑아매바 다 띠다비 셈즈이래.
Of course, some people might claim when they are feeling in general down for various reasons in life, maybe their business isn't going well or they're having some other kind of life problem, that they're feeling depressed. Well, this kind of, feeling of being depressed is not what we're referring to by depression. Clearly, depression is a more serious state where one's hope is extinguished, one feels very despondent, and one has very little confidence.
당 닝운이 낭운이 저 동철근 난데라 할레바가 쌈로 동거요 동급이 염선데요 땅아 스타버드 드니 야나컴마 다나 대장 아초 보여나이나 다 동철제기 타니데요 사로 요거 말에 당상 사르고 조요래 대마도 지 시집고 많잖나 뭐뭐지 그 동철 나궁우 등우 증거요 말에 대전도 다치베양 치는 말에 디즈 지금 용시신을 연래 있나요 다 자노가 로총단을 개바 배 망보고 잡나더니 동서가 나빠진다 배 망보요 건데 다 코줄 셈그 등을 다나 ranga tariga nitsar chaga shadi kirondi tanga pe semnongla tariga tene dungur chembo zungjongondo tenina ta lu mambo jigine dan ditada daga semkar dana ranga jimjik shemnyong.
So depression is something that I've paid a lot of attention to and have done research into for many years now. The reason being that I've encountered so many people, particularly young people, but also older people in China, who are experiencing and have experienced great suffering in this regard. Depression as a word, a term, didn't exist in Tibetan. It's a new word that has been invented in recent times. The condition of depression obviously, therefore, wasn't something that was particularly widespread, but certainly in my experience in China, witnessing the great mental suffering of so many people and having contact with that, this is something that, I've really regard extremely serious, and for this reason have dedicated quite a lot of effort into coming to understand this illness.
다 나때 줄고니나 나때 주버시키가 탑대 가레제나 셔ton거 내라 땅상 샘컴르 방가레가 너 논식즈레 샘 영을 방에다는 때는 논식 메바존나 초코저요래 야 땅상 만방가레가 그 샘데 롱기 또 금종화즈레네 덴디 샘다 첩보 용조원도 럼기 지다만 동야다는 된자경 다리 응곡탑너레 된자세기요래.
In terms of treating this disease, there are different approaches. Psychologists may have different ways of attempting to treat the condition in terms of achieving states of mind. Doctors, at the same time, through their interventions, can attempt to control the symptoms of depression.
Tenis mande chat sondi mande mandongdi yang dari semkum mabde yongre. Ta yena mande la tanir doshok niba verna dari sem rnarda ne matap kyodan. Ranga dari alapa la sokba libola onu pa yonna. Dejend tan chammo onyun mukma la sokba nyun mukgyo. De la sokba tanir doshok niba mozgore. De nina ta mandonggi de yang tab chig reje dana. De dari tab yakshude mare.
So while taking medicine may be one means of going about addressing depression, it's certainly not the best one. Clearly, when one stops taking meditation, the symptoms are still there. On the other hand, there are also all kinds of negative side effects associated with depression medication. So it's not the best means of treating depression that we have available to us.
출리라 따빠 요난자 맨난자 소지 상등군야 동의군야 더마인 바가 흥학도 이제다 잠판거 샤워 접교 너추 문이 장네 그거 딱 가요로 그 나때라다리 판바요지다 나때야라 짝탑교 그 더니 니 있나 그 초와 그 냠용스르구나 자가 니 다리 럭링 것도 없고 그 체르남발라 ngochu 디바지.
Myself, as a Buddhist teacher, I have had experience in witnessing the great success of Buddhist methods in addressing depression. These including meditation, emptiness meditation, mindfulness meditation, the recitation of mantra, practice, helping altruistic engagement. I have had experience of all of these methods being extremely effective in treating depression.
다 도머 네 상통고야 상통고야데 나가수 출근나나 때 나만이 연데 당선 롭자 몽보지그 상네 잠바니 저거 상통데 탑거 너지 디츠 통통즈 그런 거 레세근데 그다나 임밥샤나 베르나 디럽 갸피르갑나 갸체 첨보 지발레 균지그갑나 척송원제나 근니 잠비 탁바이 샘기 란친 랍다그나 샘기 란친 땀다그나 직바 탐치 맹게르장 대와 말이 락도 톱제이다 딱 나마그니 베르나 샘도 람보치 따바즈레 되니 잠바 땡아 수다리 잠바도 tene takbar tabazere alambo chendo takbar tabjona kan rotum na mare tiawada ngachu chambi go ge semdo sara ndere semdo sara korjizina toga dan jiteng kam gon jigba dan nat tamchit mare jinjo tene dewa dan gawa chuwa doso tamchit yang ramji mambat mambat jin de yam jongyo zeidana pe saru sonyore.
So in recent times, there is a lot of discussion and a lot of enthusiasm for the meditation practice of mindfulness. This is something that has, though, always existed in the Buddhist tradition. In the great 8th century text, The Way of a Bodhisattva, there's a verse that says, "But if the elephant is firmly bound by the rope of mindfulness on every side, all fears will vanish and everything constructive will come into my hands." And so this verse is really likening the various afflictive thoughts of the mind to an elephant, and the mindfulness meditation method as the reins that bring this elephant under control. And when this is done, then positive mental experiences such as happiness, pleasure, etc., they are able to arise more readily.
Chamba nirjak gomdide sem ge sem la teida. Tani sem jiang momu binga zechjide nyambarja. Dir gende nandi ngamo yang tani nyambarja. Nabdi nyarandi yang nyambarja. Gende sowi chodna sem de lodambang. Sem de chamba da shijeng gergone rangi rangla yinrang da tagaida. Tati 지 야르 참 돈본즈이나 다롱 때라 함통다나 대전다나 지 직된린 대빈 냠적 장내 모여래다 대점 마시나요 그러나 뜻다위 있는 거 당선 롭자 몸보즈나 되네 상동 공교원도 배 만져 가르침 보즈래.
So this kind of meditation where we focus single-pointedly and are able to abide in this state, and in general with the various things that arise in our life to be able to deal with them in this way is in fact a very important kind of meditation.
샤밥 제베다는 또 상통 검색 찍어래. 대치레제나 잠바니어를 잡아 주. 리 잠바니어를 잡아. 소라 잠바니어를 잡아. 셈 잠바니어를 잡아. 추 잠바니어를 잡아지. 다 잠바니어를 잡아 주고 공래.
So mindfulness meditation is one very useful practice. Another meditation practice that has great relevance to depression is contemplative meditation. So where we can talk about the 4 applications of mindfulness, contemplating the body, the emotions, the mind, and phenomena.
베나 리잠바 니르정바이나 데니 렁글 린더 답시조거 빡바 데니 하 차 riba kang tela soba ramba jenda tage tironina tani shinang warsam ngoli taga storm kangdang kangna inara ngoma ingona changma tagba tir tabirang jenzu rakho mara ngasu mojang ge roda mojang ge khari tirona o tanda zuhazre kha nikhazre makhazre ze pe zuba zukkiga tsira tidang jawa jang ge ngasu ligum thoma warsam tage tirona tani 지 막상이라는 잔자가 무신이나 더양 리근 잠바데 자르죠.
So by contemplating the contemplation on the body, our clinging and our grasping to our physical forms can be lessened as we step by step, piece by piece, analyze each part of our body, from our skin to our bones, our blood, our organs, etc. And we come to a realization of its impure nature. This actually helps us in lessening our grasping to it.
tani tsora dungmur wasayi ta tsora ina dewa tang dungmur tangnyum zi ysam yore re tana nirkab kun tsora dewa tsam yona ya namji ga nirkabna tamchi po martaq bi ramji janzar martaq wa njer ron njerwa tamchi dungmur wa zayi ta tsora kangdang kang inaran namji ga nirkabna ta martaq wa da dungmur ji ramjin cha ma tu zeman taqba dewa jin chapaz yokume no tela yang ko arche tabre.
And in terms of meditating on our emotions, this enables us to realize their impermanent nature, that there is happiness and that there is sadness, that they are essentially always changing. Anything that is changing is suffering. And so this kind of contemplation enables us to lessen our grasping towards emotions.
Tani sim jambani or jabate, tanga su sim de la ju Ramandra Mons Nanton Char, Nanton Ramandra Yore, Rayan Ribag Togerondi, Maua Martieva Dana, Deban Gatsarva, Tata Dean, Gajik Travag, Annie on the Shadi Kiriona, Teni, Gajik Trava Dean, Ranjin Jabaz Mare, then the Tarti Sim Dean, Annie on the Togerondi, Tissum Dan Trava. Tila Martini Sim maker, Tissum Zendica, Drotax Marto, Menu de Nishi Yanta Pation.
And by contemplating or practicing the application of mindfulness in respect of our minds, in general, our minds are full of discursive thoughts of all kinds of nature, but by focusing on the current moment and nothing else, not the past and the future, then we can come to an understanding about the nature of our mind and not cling to ideas of its essential permanence or inherent existence.
Tane chu ngatsun jiktenga kamna shirurgo nguboda nanga ngubo. Tane yodo jok tamcha daftaga charyonina tane stombani yimba dagme pa yimba tere.
And the contemplation regarding phenomena encourages us to develop a realization of the empty and selfless nature of phenomena.
Jamba niwer jokbando Logic sugar kamna yore, Netari Jambani José, the Coranzo, than Dragon the way. Girgan solar children.
Of course, these 4 applications of mindfulness are in the southern tradition as well. I'm sure you know about them, yeah? Yeah.
Dragon the way.
Have you learned about the 4 applications of mindfulness? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So tamashi. Kutsoshi.
Nando Chibarendo now?
Is the content the same as what Kempo has just explained?
It's Chittanupassana and about mind and Dhammanupassana is the worldly phenomena and Kayanupassana about body and the other one Vedananupasana about feeling.
Yeah, Chikpare.
Oh, yeah. That Chenamba, the Tare Gum Gurua. The Muni, the Gumna, Tarangayana Rangachi, Samkum Ganateso, Yona Menroatan, Carte, the you Carte Mena, Mao, Nerkamna Semte, Nateso Mungu.
By engaging in this kind of meditation practice, it really does have the capacity to heal mental afflictions, heal mental illness, and for people who may not, in fact, have or feel themselves to be mentally afflicted or to suffer from a mental illness, by engaging in meditation is actually a very good preventative measure for future mental illness.
Donda Nibada, Tani Ngama, Tani Womagar Kamna, Dagman Donan Droar Namjus, Chudan Kanza ever Namni Sonde. Tani Droa Simchin, the True Shetana, Chu Dagme Paji Bazada, Kanzaka Dagmepa, Jidana, Dagme Nisonde. So Masu Kazaderanga, ta not Parchevas the Sim of Ductela Hajang, Tamburzan Bata, Ducte Hajang. Toga Tan Zumba Chimboshi, Chaper the Nufshoko Moso in Nena, the Niji, a round the Nyang Top Chewotana, a round the Tambur Zumba, a round Tam Chazon, Tenjaga, Ndishi, Chap Chimbun Riore, Tan Dela Tunichiron, Tenia, not Ramada Shonchironina, so dear Nimbo, to Seruchide, Domain Nambani Gumjo, the Karchimbore.
And then the second Buddhist measure that can be very, very effective is selflessness. It was said by Chandrakirti that the Buddha taught two kinds of selflessness of the person and selflessness of the phenomena, so that beings may obtain liberation. In actual fact, a lot of mental illness that is suffered by people today is related to a very strong sense of self and a very strong sense of clinging and grasping to self. Maybe this is particularly strong among people in the West. In any case, meditation on selflessness, the two kinds of selflessness, is very important in this context.
tani shngak kyabar janzi donjir lak tani ti shngak tela tani nyemba tela tani uni chane ga mambo ji ga ta tongser ga na ta ngi uni na ta mangak zo tani tongser ga na sirje perna ngala nga shiu mamba mare ta na nang sem ga ta ka mamba je jona ngarang ga rang tu cham ta ngarjer cham mahem ba ga tani mambo ji ga ta tongser ga na te tani chak sangwi chani na tinja lab jana ya teji topa zigda na teji drop zigda mun sam yu ngarang la ichi yo.
And then the third measure that I would like to share with you tonight is a mantra that is very effective in addressing depression, one that I have had a great deal of personal success with, actually, in helping other people to overcome their depression. While I may not be a doctor of the body, I have, without any sense of pride or arrogance, have had great success in helping many people overcome depression through this method. So I would, in fact, refer to it as my main pith instruction.
chirgo yachi kyavgilo rapto shongni lo shimir kaptena tani sacha jambazaga chuchup shadan jodi tani ta lamgum khambur dazirze jizir gomba gnane khongrin jasonga khong yagarne ngare tani khong yagarne ondi ngala yige khandon tamba zujinson ti tamba da jamba chunge jig danir shege marada ti nang yige denmark chigdo tarta warda taga nge taga rangir jindong rijindong chapto zonje 다 키르남빙 가레가 추어 맞던 수인한데 옛매 치네야 다 되게 추어 단이 있는데라 지금 산로를 따내다 그다리 언덩이 군이 응우요니 쓰르즈레 대니나 니 이게 데만드 땅 아담 냠도 물론 니시담바 나강아 송나라는 리다 맘저레 다가 딩이 진던 창에 송린.
And this mantra, this tantric mantra, was actually given to me in 1986. Is one that I have practiced for almost 30 years now. Back then I was on my way to a teaching in a monastery, and on the way I met with Khenpo Deza, who had actually returned from India, and he gave me this instruction manual or practice manual, and I have one page of it here, and I really feel that it has extraordinary efficacy, and I've experienced this and have continued its practice over almost 30 years.
Mamba samne teni girgin samne shika jamba ge yirkin la teni njirn roazin teni jima tan dinona sangi mayo wazi ji ondore ta sangi mayo ada rang sem ji ngero ada sem ji dinghon mo serze shayore ta tindi jima ngindi igen de teni dana tang uni ngarang ge samnayo shawa kangda kamjna ji yit tambo teni shawa tari ge ngoyor ngawo ngoyor ngayo den자즈 레척 뭐yen 대니나 그 니런 거이나 다 저런 거 이처럼 치 마치용 강다리양 니런 거 있는 더 지금 니바 침보다 신럽 침보자 써요.
To begin with, I wouldn't describe myself as someone who was unmovable in my personality. I went through many phases of wanting to be a doctor, wanting to be a teacher, and etc. But really from the point in time that I began to do this practice and chant this mantra of the Akshobhya Buddha, the immovable one, I really discovered that my undertakings, my endeavors and my aspirations became solid, became stable, and I have great belief. I don't know whether or not, in fact, you do, you might or you might not, but I really feel that this mantra is one that has great power and also great power of blessing.
다데나 지마 디 흥각다나 이게 지외온 말에 그 임접주 때네 지 측직네 범그 야르마토나 때네 나랑 딱하니 뭐몽보지가 지 뭐몽보즈가 던자세 맘뇨 옛날에 니 게르게 때네 지가 다 코랑 안바 나고 때제니나 다 춘디 범 측직 야르마톤조 제 때네 뭐몽보즈도 때네 다리 적송 저런 강타리야나 노바요지 말했삼고 출리가 잠바츠이나 냠슬랑네나 허르낭 아츠 스만이나 만도 출릭 답바 요메 단텐자 말해 ngak은 이바데요 잔자데 델라지 출릭 잠바다나 답바 요메 그 쳐버지 말해 델라 니바 쳐버장조데 머시 냠슬랑나요 다리 총제 데나 그 넘바 촐라 테랑이 무스르 그 지킨 모즈가 그 따가이 처럼이다 대랑인디 흥각도 다리 쳐남바 말아 그 지금 돈지네 되네 쳐남바 곰크요나 라랑 급지잖아 되네 지마 잠바가 춘예즈난 된다면 요네나 코랑라 다리가 테스타원 돈갑지나 냔제.
So this mantra, in fact, doesn't have many words. It has, in fact, only 10 syllables. It's not one that I've, taught or before lots and lots of people, but certainly on an individual basis over time I've really shared it with a lot of people, and they've really had enjoyed great success from it. I don't feel it's one that you necessarily have to have religious faith in order to derive efficacy from, in the same way that medicine can be beneficial to people regardless of whether they have a particular belief or not. I feel that this mantra has efficacy in and of itself. So if you have the need, feel free to write it down, and in the future if you encounter someone who would be in need of it or who would benefit from it, feel free to share it with them.
단데 옴산자 마하로카나 홍팟 옴산자 마하로카나 홍팟 옴산자 마하 로카나 홍팟 단데 다리 거나가 랑커 지거 납독다 된다지 말에 마총 보크 사차나 다리가 드니 다 하정 괴바 진보 좀 펌거 공급 측송을 주잖아 단디 흥각도 란 지금 돈지스 있나 더건 잠보는 걸 하다 흘러다 노진라 소바 탐치 다리가 노바 탐치 저런지로 송어래.
The efficacy of this mantra is not something that I'm making up myself. I should add here that I forgot to add before that Khenpo would advise somebody who would like to recite this mantra to recite it 10 times or even upwards of to 100,000 of times for benefit. In any case, the great efficacy, potency of this mantra was described by the great Tibetan master Mipan Rinpoche, who described it as having the power to surmount all of the deities, nagas and spirits.
대전도 름느 탐sit 다리가 매버린 게로 하다나 참미 비ringala 소바거 득바 탐sit 적버린 게로 송을.
The ability to even rectify or purify any of the 5 boundless actions that are undertaken.
네, 다지 지르게 왕작 그 나츠 르카 감접니나 출랍되는 르카 접교 ndso 탐sit 양탁버는 접지다나 대전도 다 듣당 varchilla 소바가 드니 강기 양 멋지게 다나 대덕 탐sit 그 단디 흥역도나 출글라 따빠 요난자 맨난자 되니 랑라 때따위 나 요난자 맨난자 닝운이 난다 하정 가르침보서 써요.
And in terms of the various activities and endeavors we engage in our everyday life, it gives us the ability to carry these out very effectively and smoothly, to overcome obstacles, to eradicate barriers. Regardless of whether we have religious faith or not, it's a mantra with great potency, whether we are afflicted with illness or whether we are not.
네 나추고 조박은디 대런 그 차트인데 조직 고직 잡직소래 더 잡직소니나 네 나추고 공바 나추고 다 런그 샘기 납주르시 지그 토모 마임비 망어 때다리 케르남바 대랑 단다나 레디오 그 납쇼고 마이난자가 샤르쇼고 마이난자가 마총 창마라 샘기 난메사도 배 공부래 대인이나 참말라 다리 편비치트 되는 어묵스르거 더가 버라인.
So tonight, because tonight's teaching was organized by the Buddhist Society here at Cambridge University, I wanted to share with you this profound teaching, a pith instruction. Today, people without mental afflictions are extremely few, and so I would, and I decided that I would like to share with this great teaching with everybody, regardless of whether they're from the East or from the West or wherever. It really does have great power.
네, 어묵스르더 지고바지가 더가 돈다가니요. 돈다 찍더 맞송 연등 그 소화가 쳤더. 맞세가 쳤더. 네서 강당 강쇼나. 대체 쇼난 자가 등을 쇼난 자 더가 단 소위 여름 그 쳤더. 네서 강라 특나. 아더니 점바 첨부 머직지다나. 당 아츠 맞세지긴더 지 대체 단 등을니가 라마리다. 아주 사차 mambo나 카회즈 거너래 라리 잡나 터지 시찌 잡나 드그리제 네 멋세지게도 답변나 람 통보즈가 야르잖아 양 마라 터즈 바브란제 양 더가 탕즈가 하라 손디 양 라즈간 거고나 아주 런코리 있나 사차 소소소소 로고디 드니 람 잠자 모원 조건도가 대당 자와가 멋센데 양나 지 니마치그 베르나 다리 다른 거 샘그 가마있나 ngacho dengor shiro derkir yene shiro dewa yene yam 상공 오늘 끝나요 초라 잠바요네 다 땡진 직된 zire 대니나 네서강라 특나요 참마가 야라지 샘그 스톱식 기에 되나 다가 네 샤완도 做 탐치다 동린 샤완도 做 탐치다 당린 시죠 좀바시죠 너 가르침보래.
The other thing that I would like to talk or to urge as extremely important in our lives, it's inevitable that we will confront all kinds of ups and downs. Moments of happiness, moments of unhappiness. We have a saying, an idiom in Tibetan, which says, after you go up a mountain, then you go down. After a moment of happiness, then there's sadness. This changeable nature is in fact the absolute reality of our everyday lives, and it's very important that in the face of whatever we encounter, that we maintain a mind that is at ease.
Tani gindenga tari kondenge jikire ta chulga lojong shije jemjik shijinde ta tirim yersik bala metumrong azre cherezena ta chuga tani dame kartawa innan jaga stemjer kartawa innan jaga ndsoga somlo tega matsu gindenga choatela pamba rya chimbozu tokoyore.
The other thing is, particularly in the 21st century, the study and the research into Buddhism is absolutely indispensable, whether it be the view of selflessness or whether it be dependent origination. All of these views, these doctrines, are of direct and absolute relevance to our everyday lives.
가성한 dana 제조인데 간퍼를 높쳤네 타르시는 걸 로마 다 지금 그런 거 때문에 자체적으로 견지 그 헤르블레가 로종 치기요스 다 로종 신우 띠 르하다 때문에 오늘 전에 그 그런 몸 살게요스 가리 점점 가리잖아 당아서 가르쇼고 뭐 디르디르다가 가모지가 내까나 때문에 난 셈기 어네서다 쉬를 공부본도 졸라 딱신 된자스 도와주산 배 얌선 지고제 오늘 전에 된다래 아주 쉬우부 원도시나 다 야가리 난자 보이리 난자 빼줘버래 레다 난 셈기 야라 나트만 난 셈데 야라 지 헤르 짤 파리오노 닝오네나 카르쇼데나 오네가 지 처음에 로정 시기지나 베나 제체자발라가 교인직도 진짜나 다로 된자 몸보지그나나 되니 그런 거 따반데 말아 척도요 말아 아주 뭐는 바 롭자 침보 롬고 통그 때니 샷좀 전에나 그런 맛이 공간에 좀 직된 감수 시차러라 또 대단 잡아서 많이 봐가 좀 되라 좀 되라 차치요노도 아주 처음에 걸고네
In particular, the way of the Bodhisattva, written in the 8th century, this is something that everybody, particularly students engaged in their doctoral research or whatever it may be, should really read, and it contains such amazing wisdom. In actual fact, I encountered a student who had actually graduated, and they remarked to me about just how amazing, in fact, they found this wisdom, even in general, even though we can say that in terms of the outer level of development, places like Tibet, etc., are, really quite poor, but the intense wisdom of, this text and others like it is insurpassable and very much worth the study and attention of everyone.
가르제나 맞춰 점선단 담바에나 산지 출력 받텔라야나 문이 짱네 거바도나 쳐래 고아 거바도나데 거바데 다 돈토라 송요다 되니 차다단요네나 되니 출력 받을 줘네 데 그런 거 땅도 말로나 그런 거 줘네 되나 말은 주이나 문이 지 산지비 출력이나 다 잠바 쓰고 그런 데라 거바도나 거바데 당린 지기요래 gabade tong chore gabade tong gore maso boju na tong na 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 pe tsopade tene rolan tamche gna na lojong tamche gna na tsopande karchen bola tsare.
And in terms of raising objections, engaging with the teachings critically, this is absolutely advisable. There is absolutely no problem whatsoever with objections being raised, and indeed they should. Within the Tibetan tradition, we regard debate and rational investigation as really being the crux of our study methodology.
돈다 타마다 ngachu chongmaga tene janla phambaga shawa drupjinda perna ji gelega thak dan khori chongchup ko shawa inna jaga tene napa tan chapchurwa tan dchola jigdare jindang ko tene phamba drupjo chabrd rana susunguni na tene ji phama gekho dchola kurta da shankyong shijo hajang kar chembore nga europe ka sachana yonde tene genko mombo go 다 그런 존나 부고 땅키 메데나 tene 그런 흐송레 제게 남트로 mombo sor근데 된저이나 녜티나 마수 헬쇼 수이나 파마다 길근라 쩐는지이다 tene 쩐 첨보 탐치 근나나 파마다 길근더 쓰고요래 tene 로총 수이네나 데라 정수 쳇더야 베 다리 좀바게 첨보 쉬게요래 된저스 그거니 tene 랑기 파마다나 다 genkon도 수시사서 그 잔조아 미르다나 던조그 참말라 지 라니 거에 그거는 샤와가 판바줍지원데 가르쳐야래.
And then the final thing that I would like to stress is the absolute importance of doing things that benefit others, whether that be other human beings or other animals, whether it be work towards protection of the environment or towards helping ill people or refugees, whatever it may be. One thing in particular is the importance of looking after elderly family members. The Eastern tradition talks about the great debt of gratitude that younger people have to teachers and to parents. This is extremely important. However, in coming to Europe, Kempo has heard of many instances where many old people have essentially died in situations where they haven't had the care or attention of their children. So looking after one's parents and fulfilling these responsibilities is clearly an important thing to do. Thank you very much.